I'd like to talk a little bit, as parents are bringing up their children and managing their household, can you talk a little bit about God's rules and house rules and principles and methods? What's the difference between principles and methods, and why is it important to teach those to your children? And how does that relate to God's rules, house rules?
Boy, that might be a little difficult, but first the difference between God's rules and house rules are the difference between lying and jumping on the couch.
Okay.
Okay, now, if you're just as clear to the people, the children, that they're both disobeying God, then they grow up thinking that Father had a funny view of God about jumping on the couch.
Right.
And
Right.
so reject the other one on lying also. So
Okay, so if the parents show
no distinction.
no distinction, or the parents don't have any sense of proportion over Ten Commandments stuff, and which fork you use at the dinner table.
Yeah, right.
Right. And it all flattens out for the child.
Yeah.
And then when he realizes that God doesn't care what fork I use,
He
assumes
doesn't care about the either.
God
either.
doesn't care about the other.
You know, it's poor reasoning, but nevertheless, it's reasoning that happens.
Right. What's the difference between principles and methods?
A principle is abstract, and a method is concrete.
Okay.
A principle is love your neighbor, and punching him in the nose is
An ill-guided method, ill-advised method.
yeah, right. A method would be hugging your neighbor, baking a cherry pie, or something like that. A method is they putting the principles into action.
Okay.
So
And
both are
so principles have to be incarnate in a method. You have to
Yeah.
take on a method at some point.
someplace.
But if you then think that method, the only way to love a neighbor is through cherry pies,
Yeah,
and apple pies are disobedient, then
that's right.
then you're too focused on the method.
On the method, and not, a lot of people are focused on the method. I've just been thinking the difference between living light, as in Ephesians 5:8, where it says sin is exposed by light, not by talking about it. It is shameful to speak of those things that they do in secret,
Right.
but light makes everything visible. Well, people think that if you're relational, you're light.
Right.
And relational is a method, and light is the principle.
Okay.
And people end up learning all the relational things,
Affirming them and
all that
talking,
kind
all
of
that
stuff.
Yeah.
And they may not be light at all. But light is something that makes other people feel guilty when you don't say a thing.
Okay.
Okay?
And you could say every one of the laws that Moses gave, and tell them direct to their face, and they don't feel guilty
Yeah.
because it was all you talking and no
Yeah.
lie.
Right, that's right.
Okay. So bring this back to the home, bringing up children. You want children to internalize the difference between principles and methods. You want children to internalize, know the difference between God's rules and house rules, so they can go over to a friend's house where God's rules are the same, but the house rules are different. You can
Right.
jump on the couch over there, and it doesn't unsettle them.
Or you can watch movies that you shouldn't be watching and things like that. But if they get the principle, the kids would know they shouldn't be watching this movie
Right.
because it violates the principle.
Right. Okay.
Just one thing, you see it in Matthew, Mark, and Luke 6:46, where it says, "Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks." I remember your mother saying to you, "Douglas, is that what's in your heart?"
Mm-hmm.
You say, "What do you mean, Mom?" She said, "It just came out of your mouth." Okay, so you teach your children. Well, the Great Commission has an expression there that most people miss. It says, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. It doesn't say, teach them everything I've commanded you. It says, teach them to obey everything I've commanded you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and so we spent hundreds of years teaching the commandments and not teaching obedience. And to teach obedience, you have to teach the heart.
And you have to model You have to give something to imitate.
Imitate, and you're teaching the heart, not the head. So people can quote all the doctrine, sound as can be, and all the commandments, and not obey any of them. So in order to obey, all this truth has to be heart truth in the kids, and that's where the principle is.
Which means they've got to be regenerate. They've got to love Christ.
That's right. But even after they love Christ, they sometimes have reverted to what it says in Galatians 3, are you now made perfect by your effort?
Right.
In other words, they revert to effort instead of trust. The great hymn called "Try to Obey." Okay, so
what? Trust and obey.
All right. So the trust is heart, and the try is method.
Okay, good. You mentioned the verses Mom would quote. I'm pretty sure that the first 3 verses I ever memorized were the ones that she would say over and over. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks is one. And Moses in Numbers says, be sure your sin will find you out.
Yeah.
That was another one. And Ephesians was another one. Be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. And
speaking of brother-sister relationships.
Yes. I also remember, that, and maybe you could flesh this out or comment on this. I remember one time you talking to me and laying down the 3 laws of our house, which were no lying, no disobedience, and no disrespect of your mother.
Okay, I don't remember.
You don't remember that?
I do remember the lying because remember when we put the hoop up in the backyard at North Cherry Grove, and it started to rain right after we got it up, and you and Evan said, "Dad, can I go shoot baskets?" I said, "There's mud out there."
Right.
Well, you kept after me, so I said, "Okay, go shoot baskets." Well, I just painted the house white, and the next day I saw 2 black handprints on the house. Well, it didn't take Sherlock Holmes to figure out whose they were. So I knew it was Evan. So I asked him. He said, no, he didn't do it. So after the spanking, I went in the house and said, your mother said, Jim, you've got this rule that kids may or may not get spanked if they disobeyed. You make a judgment call on that. But if they lie about it, it's an automatic spanking. I said, that's right. Well, you teach the kids to lie. I said, what do you mean I teach the kids to lie? She said, you catch them red-handed, and then you ask them if they did it. Don't ask if they did it.
If you know.
If you know. If you don't want to spank them, don't. But don't make them lie and then have to spank them because they lied about it. So that's...
Okay. Good. Thank you very much.
That's it.